Imagine just for a moment that the Roman governor Pontius Pilate, the very man who gave the order for Jesus to be crucified, was tormented by what he had done, not just for days or weeks, but for the rest of his life. What if the echoes of that fateful decision never left him? Now imagine this. What if Pilate didn't stay silent about it? What if, gripped by guilt or perhaps awe, he wrote a letter to the emperor himself, Tiberius Caesar, explaining what had truly happened in Judea, not just the trial, but also Jesus' teachings, his death, and even his resurrection? As unbelievable as it may sound, there are ancient writings that claim such a letter existed. More than that, some of these accounts describe Jesus in ways that the Gospels never do, including his physical appearance. Could it be that Pilate recorded a personal account of the man who changed history forever? Before we dive deeper into this astonishing story, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. We explore historical mysteries, biblical discoveries, and faith-filled stories that inspire and ignite the heart. Hit that button and let's journey together. Centuries ago, stories began to circulate that Pilate had sent a written report to Tiberius in Rome. This was not unusual. Governors often wrote updates to their superiors, but this one, according to some early Christian sources, was different. It allegedly detailed the trial and crucifixion of Jesus. Even more stunning, it may have included an account of his resurrection. What makes this report even more compelling is how grounded it appears to be in the Roman world. In the letter, Pilate defends himself against accusations from Herod Antipas, who is reportedly speaking poorly of him to Caesar. Now think about this. If someone were inventing a fictional story to glorify Jesus, would they really include something so mundane, an administrative squabble between regional leaders? And yet, that's exactly the kind of detail that shows up in historical documents. It's subtle, but it adds a layer of authenticity. Fast forward to the year AD 138. A Christian writer named Justin Martyr, one of the early defenders of the faith, mentioned this report in a letter to Emperor Antoninus Pius. He referred to Pilate's description of the soldiers gambling for Jesus' clothing at the crucifixion, a scene that also appears in the Gospels. A few decades later, another church father, Tertullian, claimed that Tiberius was so moved by Pilate's report that he proposed adding Jesus to the Roman pantheon of gods. While we can't verify whether that actually happened, the fact that early Christians believed it says a lot about how influential Pilate's testimony was believed to be. The story doesn't end there. In 311 AD, Emperor Maximinus, an opponent of Christianity, allegedly produced a forged version of the Acts of Pilate in an attempt to discredit the growing faith. Ironically, the very existence of a fake version proves how powerful the original must have been. So what did Pilate supposedly write in this lost report? Let's explore a reconstructed version of what such a letter might have sounded like based on ancient accounts. To the most noble Tiberius Caesar, greetings. Events of unusual magnitude have recently unfolded in my province. They are of such a nature that I feel compelled to describe them to you, for they may, in time, shake the very foundations of the empire. These words, imagined yet reflective of real Roman correspondence, capture a sense of unease, perhaps even fear. Pilate's tone suggests that something far beyond political drama had taken place. He goes on to describe the city of Jerusalem as nearly impossible to govern. The people, he writes, were constantly on the brink of revolt. His military forces were minimal, just one centurion and a handful of soldiers. He had appealed to the governor of Syria for reinforcements, only to be told that Syria could barely defend itself. This wasn't just local unrest, it was a warning sign. Pilate feared that the Roman Empire was stretching itself too thin, and Judea was one spark away from explosion. Then Pilate recounts how he first heard about a certain man from Galilee, Jesus of Nazareth. At first, he feared this man might be stirring up rebellion, but it quickly became clear that Jesus had no political ambition. In fact, Pilate says, Jesus spoke kindly of the Romans and taught peace. One day, as Pilate passed by the pool of Siloam, he saw a large crowd gathered. In their midst stood a young man, leaning calmly against a tree. The people hung on his every word. Pilate was told that this was Jesus, and here comes a description unlike anything found in the Bible. Pilate described Jesus as having golden hair and a beard, his face serene and otherworldly. He looked to be about 30. In contrast to the dark features of the local population, Jesus stood out as radiant and calm. Was this truly how Jesus looked? Or was Pilate seeing something more, something spiritual? Pilate didn't approach Jesus that day. He instead asked his secretary, a man named Manalus, to listen in. Manalus, who spoke fluent Hebrew and understood the culture well, returned with a report that stunned Pilate. The teachings of Jesus, he said, surpassed those of any Greek or Roman philosopher. When asked whether taxes should be paid to Caesar, Jesus answered, "Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God." Pilate was deeply impressed. This was not the speech of a revolutionary, it was the voice of a wise man, perhaps more than a man. So impressed was Pilate that he allowed Jesus to teach freely. He could gather crowds, choose disciples, and speak openly. There were no restrictions placed upon him. But this freedom enraged the religious leaders of the city. Pilate noted that it wasn't the common people who opposed Jesus, it was the elites, the priests, the scribes, the wealthy Pharisees. They saw Jesus as a threat. He openly challenged them, calling them vipers and comparing them to painted tombs, beautiful on the outside but full of corruption within. Still, Pilate hesitated. Time and again, he received complaints, but he refused to act against Jesus. He even feared that the city might take matters into its own hands if he didn't comply. After all, it wouldn't have been the first time Jerusalem had stoned a prophet. In a telling passage, Pilate admits that if the people felt justice was denied, they might bypass him altogether and appeal directly to Caesar. It was a tightrope Pilate was walking, trying to keep the peace, preserve Roman authority, and protect a man he clearly found innocent. Eventually, the pressure became too much. The religious authorities demanded action. The crowd, stirred by manipulation, cried out for crucifixion. Pilate washed his hands before them all, saying he was innocent of this man's blood. But history remembers who held the power and who gave the order. Jesus was crucified on a hill outside Jerusalem. His clothing was divided among the soldiers, and his followers wept in disbelief. But 3 days later, the rumors began. The tomb, they said, was empty. The guards claimed an angel had appeared. Jesus had been seen, alive, by his disciples. The man who had died was now walking again. Pilate, if he truly wrote this report, would have been aware of these claims. Whether he believed them is another matter, but according to some traditions, he included them in his letter to Caesar. And if he did, then perhaps that explains why later emperors considered the impact of Jesus so seriously, even to the point of fearing his influence. In the end, whether or not Pilate described Jesus with golden hair or celestial calm, whether he truly wrote a letter or not, the most powerful truth remains unchanged. Jesus lived, he taught, he was crucified, and millions believe he rose again. The mystery of his appearance pales in comparison to the promise he gave, that one day all who believe in him will see him face to face, not as a figure from history, but as a living savior in a place where time no longer matters. That hope is not anchored in the words of a Roman governor. It's grounded in the living testimony of hearts changed, souls healed, and lives transformed through faith. Thank you for staying with us through this extraordinary story. Whether you believe the acts of Pilate are fact or fiction, one thing is clear. The figure of Jesus has never stopped challenging, inspiring, and transforming the world. What do you think? Could a Roman official have been more sympathetic to Jesus than we ever imagined? Is it possible that Pilate, deep down, believed in the man he sent to die? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful journeys into faith, history, and discovery. Until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.